Maya can't.
Off in the chat. I'm stopping your music as I share my screen.
Thank you.
I believe it's this. Full screen mode. Here I am. And aren't we gorgeous? Aren't
That
we
is
gorgeous?
not quite the right
Oh,
place.
thank you.
All right, friends, we are live on Instagram. I'm going to go find Patricia and Truly.
Give me a minute to accept Jess's invitation, but I am going live with Jessica right now. Hi, Jessica Letaw on Instagram. Hi, Truly on
Hi,
Instagram.
friends.
I'll try to
Right.
share this video so others can watch.
So
I
as
think
we
I'm in it.
are sort of settling into our digital space, I just wanted to explain to everybody what we're up to. We are streaming at the same time on Zoom and Instagram Live. Our Insta friends, unfortunately, you can't see the deck that we're using, but you're not missing anything. We do talk about everything verbally. And our Zoom friends, you may hear us responding verbally to some comments in the chat. We do try to, again, kind of name everything that's going on, so you're not left in the dark about, wait, what did they say about blue t-shirts? So that's what's going on.
And just to kick us off formally, this is Move the Needle, Tools for White Women, Femmes, and Thems Voting Blue in Red Communities. And we are here every Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, until the week after the election to do a debrief and probably drink a lot, I think, that day. So yeah.
Mhm. This content is specifically designed for white women, femmes, and thems. But if you're wondering if you do not fall in any of those categories and you're wondering if you're in the right place, you absolutely are. We are making sure that all of this content is as inclusive as possible while recognizing that white women occupy a very specific place in American culture with respect to oppression and privilege. And we try to engage that in really thoughtful ways specific to the election and getting Vice President Harris and Governor Walz elected. Probably the most frequent question that we get is, why are we specifically naming white women? And I think that that's a completely valid question. There's a few reasons. One, white women as a group are America's largest voting bloc. That's actually something that I learned this year, 2024. Also important to know that as a demographic, our votes are trending upward for Trump. White women went 47% for Trump in 2016 and 53% in 2020. I'm really interested to see the article that Kathleen dropped in chat about, I think, women over 50, the balance of women over 50 supporting Harris over Trump right now, which is extra great because people over 50 tend to be the most engaged and active voters. So some. Another reason that we focus on exactly white women is that we as a demographic are most likely to affect the most effective change, which is person-to-person conversations. If anybody is online for even a second, you are seeing political ads, and all media are going to be saturated between now and the election. But that's not what changes minds. What changes minds is relationships. We said in our very first conversation that our republic is our relationships, and that's how we operate here.
If you agree, you can put a hallelujah in the chat.
I also want to note real quick before we get into the working agreements, this week I am dedicating to author Sarah Smarsh, or probably more accurately, my feelings about Sarah Smarsh and the things that she writes. She is a daughter of America's working class, originally from Kansas and still lives there. She has just released a new book called Bone of the Bone, and I had an opportunity to meet her at an author event last week. And she reminded me in her comments that While white women are often treated as a monolith in media, political, and cultural narratives, we are anything but. We are an incredibly diverse group of people. And one of the reasons that we are doing the Move the Needle project is to engage that diversity as a superpower and not an in spite of.
So here's our working agreements. Every conversation that we have, we like to remind ourselves what we're agreeing to engage in. And Jess, if you'd like to kick us off.
The very first thing is that in this group, we put aside the right to comfort. We don't have the right to comfort in this learning because the world that we're trying to address is not safe. So this is not a safe space. It's a brave space. I invite Patricia's, truly, all of our community, all of our courage and loving accountability.
We resist binary thinking. I would like to invite us to do that, to resist binary black and white thinking, except where we're talking about race. Right or wrong, either or, I'd like us to resist those concepts because everything is contextual and it changes from conversation to conversation, human to human that we're connecting with.
The next one, and I actually engaged this in an offline real world conversation today. I'm so excited about it. We welcome generative conflict. In dominant culture in the Midwest, where the three of us are as women, we are often rewarded for being nice instead of being real and for being conciliatory instead of leaning into disagreement. Here, we'd like to invite all of us to allow a lot of emotional space to be in conflict with each other, with the ideas being presented, and even with ourselves. Let's love each other enough to tell the truth and hold up mirrors that need holding up, because kindness and honesty are not mutually exclusive.
And finally, we are allowed to ask for the speed we need. This is not about comfort. This is speaking for myself. When I'm doing deep learning, I often need to go a little slower to let me mull on new ideas. I want to allow each of us the time we need to think and thoughtfully speak and respond. This, like I said, it isn't about easy comfort, but creating an environment that's conducive to learning and that leans away from reacting and quick response. Oops, sorry.
Thanks to you both. Hi, everybody. I'm Truly. I am your chat moderator. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how we're going to come to an agreement as a community in the chat. And Instagram folks, I am so sorry. I cannot split my brain very well. So Jess is going to be tending to some of your comments as they come through. And for our friends joining us on Zoom, please feel free to use that chat. I want you to recognize that when you click on chat, you have options. You can chat to everybody, which is a great way to get connected to one another because, you know, we are the answer we're looking for, and it's good to know each other. Or if you want to just send a message privately to the panelists and to myself, I can make sure to lift it up for you if it is a question in an anonymous way. And to do that, you just select the option on the toggle down that says hosts and panelists. So you've got options when you're chatting, but please do get chatty. We love that, and it helps us make sure the content is relevant and specific to your needs. Other than that, we're going to keep the comments on topic. We are going to keep the conversation respectful because you're wonderful people, and so are we, and that's how we act. And if there are other working agreements that you can think of for this space, we'd love to hear them. Please add them in the chat. This is something that we are just three interested individuals creating kind of as we go. So if there is learning and wisdom that you have, we'd benefit from, you know, we're here for it. So I guess with that, I'm going to introduce myself. Hello again, I'm Truly. I'm just a community member who connected with both Patricia and with Jess through a program called Champions for Change here in our county, which is Washtenaw County in Michigan. And it's a great program for people who are interested in equity building in their communities. And so we kind of connected through those networks. But I am here as a community member, and I'm with you in the chat, learning and growing. And I'm here as a mom. I am here as a former business owner, and I am here as a white woman with you. I have a conservative family, some members conservative, some members liberal, whatever we want to call that. It is Michigan. We are in the Midwest, so there's a variety of meanings for that word. I'll just say it's a Midwestern liberal. And yeah, I'm learning with you, and I'm excited to be with you tonight. So please do use that chat.
And I am Patricia Berry. I am a white, cis, hetero woman, salty Buddhist, in a relationship with a white, cis, hetero male. I bring that up because how we are interacting as a family often comes into my examples and conversations. And I am in this space as a learner too. I'm not presenting myself as an expert, and I think Jess and Truly would echo that as well. We welcome questions from this community, even if you don't agree or have a different viewpoint. Please do let us know.
I'm Jessica A.S. Letaw. My last name rhymes with seesaw. Most people call me Jess. I am in this space as a white, cis, queer woman. I'm originally from Atlanta and Athens, and I now live in Southeast Michigan. I have assigned myself the job of housing and racial justice organizer. I think a lot about what housing justice and injustice is, and I think a lot about our histories around racial injustice and what radically loving and belonging community can look like today and in the future. And this conversation, the Move the Needle conversation, and doing what we can to support Vice President Harris and Governor Walz getting elected is a part of my current curiosity. So I am so grateful to all of you for being here tonight. I'm seeing chat in the chat, and we love the conversation. We live for it. So thank you very much.
It's actually something that I read when I get done with this. I go back and read the chat really deeply.
It's so good.
So just talking about our whys, the reason that we came into these conversations, for me, I really have, coming from like truly I'm going to say my family's not even a mixture. I am the outlier. My family is extremely conservative. They are from Southwest Idaho, and was raised in a deeply conservative community, deeply Bible Belt religious, even though we weren't technically in the Bible Belt. And I always wanted to do better about having brave conversations with people I loved that didn't result in either silence or explosions. And that's what I've dedicated kind of a lifetime and a career to doing. And that's what I'm bringing to this conversation.
I think a lot about my responsibilities as a white woman in society and my relationships. And when I was thinking about that identity in the context of the presidential election, I was thinking about our superpower of navigating through relationship and how if we can help provide tools to other white women in communities that are voting red, in families that are voting red, that could actually move the needle on the outcome of this election. We know, thanks to the vagaries of the Electoral College, that unfortunately the outcome of the vote is going to come down to about 6% of the entire voters in the entire electorate.
I just had a physical response to it.
I think it every time. Like I want to throw a shoe, I want to take a nap. Like it hits me every time. But it's a part of my urgency. And so I'm here because I want us, our community, me as an individual, to change white women's voting behavior in swing communities. All right. This political and historical moment. I am so excited to say that Colin Allred's campaign, which is for Senator Tedward Cruz's seat in Texas, as of this week, Allred is polling ahead of Cruz, which means Texas is now in play as a swing state. I don't know if y'all had this on your bingo card for 2024. I actually did. And I wasn't actually sure if it was going to happen. So I think that this is amazing. There's the fundraising, the messaging is absolutely tremendous. And so to be able to say that Texas is a part of moving the needle just feels really powerful to me. I also want to note that this isn't necessarily newsworthy, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Donald Trump posted something on the social media platform Truth Social, which was on my screen about this big, all caps, talking about how bad women have it now. And once things are better, like they should have been under Ronald Reagan and ever since, which is exactly what he says, that women will no longer want abortions.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
constructed realities in all of this, like none of which is supported by data. And again, like all caps, there is nothing that wasn't tone deaf about it. And I'm just very excited for that person to not be in a position of leadership anymore.
Mhm.
44 days until the election. Let's leave it all on the field. Go, go, go. And for folks in this conversation, we are specifically talking about navigating in relationship. We're not talking about strategies for phone banking. We're not talking about strategies for canvassing. If you're working with your local political party or some other nonprofit, they're going to help you with language and strategies for that. They look different. Within intimate relationships, it goes slow. Change is not going to happen in a single conversation. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. Change is a two-way street. So making sure that that you're present in those relationships is a part of being busy. Don't feel like you haven't done anything if you haven't gotten 49 family members to vote. If you have one meaningful conversation where you are heard and you genuinely listen, then you've been a success in this campaign and we appreciate you. 44 days, don't stop.
Okay, next slide. So where we have come from in these conversations, I think that this is, if I'm remembering correctly, this is our 6th time out into this conversation world. So what we've talked about so far is boundaries, loving agreements, deep listening, which means listening to understand and not respond, and how to sway people by telling really effective I stories, as well as talking about how to move the needle on apathetic and protest voters. And Truly's going to put a link in the comments, but you can find it on our YouTube channel. All of these conversations previously that are building blocks for where we're heading forward now.
And for our, just real quick, for our Insta friends, I have gathered all of our previous conversations in my profile under highlights called Move the Needle. So pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Jess, bring us in. I know how to pronounce this. Can I just say I know how to pronounce this?
Truly and Patricia, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about misogynoir.
Misogynoir.
Did you know how to say this a week ago?
When we started this conversation a week ago, our pronunciation, truly, bless us, was all over the map. And then I had this really tight feeling when I was coming out here today. I was like, I'm going to screw it up. So I think we did good, Jess. How did we do?
You spot on. And part of why I wanted to highlight it, and I super appreciate you guys being good sports about it, is that we are all learners in this space. Nobody is coming to this with expertise, only the experience that we have. Misogynoir is that particular combination of misogyny and racism that gets directed towards Black women and people proximate to Black women. It's a term that was coined by queer Black feminist Moya Bailey in 2010. Misogynoir, I'm gonna go into therapy mode with you guys for a moment. This conversation has felt so urgent to me. And this topic, if I were to name any one thing about why Move the Needle, I helped co-create Move the Needle, it was because I was so anxious about when Kamala declared her desire to raise her hand for the Democratic Party nomination, that there was going to be a tremendous amount of abuse leveraged towards my women of color friends and women of color all over the country. It's not just directed at her, it is cultural. And I, part of my whiteness and older sisterness is I went into protective mode. I cannot protect folks. That's not really the point of this. But what I can do is convene community conversations, these connections. where we can talk about these things. So all of that to say, I'm bringing a lot of feelings into tonight's conversation. And if move the needle is up to any one thing for me, it's tonight.
And I mean, for the email that I sent to the people that are on our mailing list, the title of my email kind of said everything for me. If I can understand it, and of course now I can't remember what the title of my email was, but if I can understand it, I can talk about it. You know, if I can put a name to it, if I can see the thing, then I can start to talk about it. And to me, that's the beginning of my understanding.
If through our work in Move the Needle, if through our work in these interpersonal conversations, we can minimize harm to the folks in our communities and even beyond, people that we'll never know, that is doing the work. That is white women doing the work of unpacking ourselves from a white supremacist and white privileging culture. I really want to focus on 3 elements of misogynoir tonight, and I'm going to look at it both through the lens of the presidential election and through everyday life. I want to talk about the angry Black woman trope, which, when leveraged specifically at Vice President Harris, she's often described as too ambitious. She's done too much. She's raised her hand too often. She talks about her family too much. She's way too proud of being a graduate of an historically Black college and university. Any like "to" statement really kind of falls under the angry Black woman. We feel as a culture uncomfortable with allowing Black women to occupy their full emotional, ambitious, professional selves. Another trope that I want to talk about is the Jezebel, the misinterpretation of Black women as hypersexualized. I knew this was a thing. Talk about body feelings. I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw a bumper sticker in Ann Arbor, which I think is one of the bluest of blue enclaves in the country. Bubbles, absolutely a bubble. Saying, "Don't elect Joe and the hoe." And I remain stunned that that's something that people feel comfortable saying out loud. There's also a trope, and this shows up in a lot of different ways, as Black women not being a real woman. I'll talk about how this shows up most recently, but it plays out in a lot of different ways. And we're not just invalidating Black women's humanity, we're specifically invalidating Black women's womanhood in a variety of different contexts.
I mean, I'm just reminded of, you know, the Barbie movie and that wonderful speech that America Ferrera did that just no matter what you do, it's the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. In our everyday lives, the angry Black woman trope often shows up as coded as too aggressive. I was talking with a Black woman colleague of mine last week who had a meeting with a white man that she hadn't met before, and she was teaching him at his request about some things that he wanted to know more about. About halfway through the conversation, his body language started getting really uncomfortable and he was backing up and, face looked very uncomfortable. And she said, can you let me know what's going on? It looks like you're troubled by something. And he said, the way that you're pointing at the screen is so aggressive and it's making me uncomfortable. And she said, I left that meeting crying, not hurt, but enraged that I wasn't actually seen as a full person. The Jezebel in our everyday lives, again, shows up a lot of different ways, but one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I named is the adultification and hypersexualization of Black children, especially Black girls. Way, way, way over the percentages of how uh, white girls are perceived and Black boys, Black and white boys, and boys and girls of other races as well. Of all of the demographics, Black girls, young Black girls, are more likely to be perceived as older than they are and much more sexual than they actually are. The not a real woman trope in real life, and again, speaking as somebody from within a blue very bubble, is the superhuman. And I think that this is something that well-meaning white folks often apply to Black women that they know or know of. And I wanted to make sure that I called it out, and I'll talk about some examples, but it is another way of tokenizing people of color around us. We are not permitting someone's full humanity when we are asking them, describing them even in complimentary terms of, oh my gosh, she can do everything. Oh my God, Black women are going to save democracy.
Oh, that
Probably true, and it shouldn't be their job.
exactly. I think that the anxiety that sparks, like I can physically see it in people, in women, Black women that I'm standing with, when that trope comes out, the anxiety that sparks is just, yeah.
Mhm.
It took me a while to identify that as a negative because it
Mhm.
felt like I was giving a compliment.
The language is so positive. And this is one of those things where, again, being learners in spaces is really helpful, because getting that feedback of, I actually don't want to be treated as a superhero, is helpful. There's a woman, Dr. Raquel Martin, who's a therapist and somebody who does really great and interesting work on social media. I follow her on Insta, who has a program called Put Down the Cape, which is specifically around supporting 100 Black women in embracing their entire humanity. So the superhuman thing is such a thing that Black women are creating initiatives and nonprofits to help dismantle it. So as white women, as white folks in these spaces, let's do that as well. And before we go on, I want to name one more example, specifically about Kamala Harris. So the not a real woman trope. Sarah Huckabee Sanders gave an interview this past week where she implicitly described Kamala Harris as not humble because she is a stepmother to her children and not a birthing mother. There are a lot of ways to invalidate somebody's humanity, but that is explicitly gendered and very much on purpose.
The fascinating retort that I heard to that was, that's true of every president so far. Not a, has not birthed a child. So
Snap.
why would you say that to Vice President Harris?
That's right. Mhm. In the presidential, so I'm talking about the what, the so what, and the now what. What is misogynoir, which we talked a little bit about. So what are the implications? And the now what, okay, what do we actually do? So we are in the so what are the implications of this? When we are dealing with tropes in conversations around Vice President Harris and the presidential campaign, we are wasting time. We are battling perception and not policy. This is not productive in any way whatsoever. It is also, and I'm speaking specifically to the Jezebel trope, this is a demeaning double standard. And I do not mean demeaning to the women that it is assigned to. The Jezebel trope is demeaning to anyone who uses it. It makes you small to reduce someone only to your evaluation of their sexuality and what that has to do with their professional lives. It's not okay, and it says a lot more about the person who is using it than it does about the person that they're talking about. In the spirit of liberating all of us and liberating ourselves, undoing the double standard of not using any kind of Jezebel hypersexualization, over-sexualization, she slept her way to the top tropes is going to be a great way to redirect some harmful conversations. This one feels heavy to me because I'm going to talk about statistics, but I have so many stories in my mind of especially Black women friends who have told me anecdote after anecdote after anecdote of every single one of these things here. Why does this matter in everyday life? When we assign Black women the label of aggressive or ambitious as a bad thing, we are actively inhibiting their professional progress. Black women are significantly more likely to experience workplace harassment. And according to one national study on women in the workplace from a few years ago, Samantha, I'm noting your comment about asking for sources. I don't have this one, but I'll make sure to do my homework a little bit better in the future. Black women are 80% less likely than white women to be promoted, even though they report a desire for professional advancement at more than twice the rate that white women express that desire. Black women are at increased risk of physical and sexual violence. They are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered than white women. And this specific incident isn't specific to Black women, but I want to highlight that Springfield, Ohio, as the result of one offhand comment in the televised debate 2 weeks ago, has experienced over 30 bomb threats. And that's not to say anything about the specific micro and macro aggressions that Haitian immigrants, immigrants in general, Black people in general have been experiencing in Springfield, Ohio, and around the country. Our language has physical consequences, and those consequences can be dangerous.
And one of the things that I think about just that moment, sharing that meme as a joke, I'm having an increased difficulty doing. Somebody on the internet said every time you shared that as a joke, you should donate to the harm reduction GoFundMe campaign, which I can't remember what it was, but I'm feeling glad that I didn't share it as a joke, even though I was inclined to. I did share it privately with a couple people, and I'm still embarrassed about that. But that joke, what you're saying is like us continuing that as a joke, I think downplays the real harm that it had. We're not talking about the facts. We're making fun of the jerk that said it, like rather than looking at the impact of what happened with that. So that's my little well of feelings around what ended up happening online because we just made it a big joke.
Yeah. I have personal feelings about what happens. I appreciate that culture is doing an amazing job right now at leaching the poison out of a lot of the especially egregious things that are happening in I will say the MAGA portion of the Republican Party right now. But some of the leaching of the poison, in my opinion, highlights it and keeps it front and center and it legitimizes it as subjects of a joke. This is a process difference of opinion. We lean into conflict. This is not something that I necessarily embrace. Other folks embrace that practice as a way of taking the sting and the harm out of comments like that. So I just want to name that even offhand comments can have massive consequences. And that's partly why we're talking about this at the conversational level. The trope of the superwoman also invisibilizes Black women's humanity. We demand disproportionate labor, frequently low paid or unpaid. It is, again, one way that well-intentioned white people, and I don't know, Insta, can you see my air quotes, are tokenizing people of color around them. You are minimizing their humanity by, quote unquote, exalting them to a pedestal. Please don't. Please assume that they are exactly as human as you are. Please don't wait for Black women to save democracy. Please learn from Black women about how they traditionally have shown up to movement work, how they traditionally have shown up to community and political change work. Lean into that learning and then find out ways to do with yourself. Samantha, I see your comment in there. Just want to say it out loud for Insta. She said that she was on a call earlier with Red, Wine, and Blue, big ups on that title, by the way, and others in Springfield, and raised about $60,000 for the Haitian community in the public schools. Thank you for
Hallelujah.
hallelujah.
I'll give that one
Patricia always invites dropping a hallelujah in the chat if you feel so moved.
Exactly.
Which I think is hilarious from my most Buddhist friend.
Hey, I'm an equal opportunity. I was raised
really
by the Baptists. We like to get hallelujah.
Baptist wolves. So yes, in the presidential election, we wanted to offer some different ways of navigating. When it comes to the aggressive, ambitious personal attacks, Move the critique to policy and not personality. This is going to make a conversation more productive. One way to do this is by saying, I understand you don't like her. That's fine. Elected officials don't have to be our friends, and frequently they're not. But I wonder what you think about her policy proposals. And I would encourage you to be ready to have policy proposals to pivot to. Mine is always going to be housing. I will talk your ear off about zoning and affordable housing and funding and, financial stacks and all of it. It's so boring and so awesome. But do what you can to pivot to policy and away from personality. When it comes to the double standard, invite the person when somebody is doing a kind of a sexuality based criticism, invite them away from that. We are absolutely culturally not holding Trump to the same standard. And we are, you guys, half a century post the sexual revolution in America, centuries after the sexual revolution in other countries and cultures. But in this day and age, in Beyonce's year of 2024, this is allowed to be a thing that we don't dwell on. When it comes to the not a real woman trope, all of the ways that this can come up, folks criticize Kamala Harris for not being a real woman or woman enough or mother enough or whatever. I would encourage you to share something that you genuinely have in common with Vice President Harris. You can say, I actually identify with Vice President Harris in XYZ way. I hope that you wouldn't dismiss me too. And just make sure that you're bringing it down to the personal level in ways, again, if you have been part of our earlier conversations, you've been a part of creating boundaries, creating space for, bold, audacious conversations, creating room for conflict. Doing this cold is going to be a little bit difficult and may invite some like flippant remarks. But if you are in genuine conversation with the person next to you, and you are identifying yourself with Vice President Harris, you have an opportunity to shift the conversation to something less harmful.
And I'm just going to name all of this takes practice.
So much practice.
I'm a
Yes.
fundraiser. Was I a good fundraiser my first 2 years? No, I was awkward and weird. That's kind of my brand.
I was going to say, are you still awkward and weird?
I'm still awkward and weird, but I own it.
Yes. You are. You're
I
so
usually say something about it. But the thing that is true for me about this work is I'm never going to be perfect at it, but I will get better at it every time I use it intentionally. And even Jess and I, who have been talking about a lot of these things for more than 8 years, that when we started these conversations, we had to re-up our game and start actually using these tools again. And I don't know, Jess, were we weird and awkward?
We were weird and awkward today.
We are weird and awkward right now. But so I'm just saying that the more you do it and the more you think about it, the better you're going to get and the more second nature it's going to be. But then there's going to come a time that you have to remind yourself about it again. It's just a skill in your muscle memory like anything else.
Mm-hmm. I want to call out Neil, who's going through TSA right now, listening to our conversation. Thank you for taking us on your trip. Appreciate that.
What's TSA? What are we talking about?
The Transportation Safety Authority. What does it stand for? He's at the airport.
I haven't heard of a group called TSA.
Nope, this is from Insta. Okay. And Neil, so glad you're here with us. So in our everyday lives, when you hear any of these tropes, any of the million permutations of these tropes brought up about a Black woman or groups of Black women in your life, we offer some examples of phrases that you can potentially use. And I wonder, Patricia and Truly, I wonder if I can invite y'all to talk about these, because I believe especially the first two were the ones that you offered to this conversation.
Truly, I'll let you kick us off.
Thanks, Jess. This one is, riff on it in the way that makes sense to you, but it's essentially saying to folks, oh, I love you, or I respect you. And you saying that is really surprising to me. I use the word surprising personally because there is what I really want to say.
Is
What
you know
I
what? I know
actually-
you, and I'm not surprised at all that you would say something so douchey. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right, Patricia. That's what I actually want to say. I want to say, I love you. I don't know if I respect you right now. I love you. And you saying that is really irritating, horrifying, gross, ick to me. But I
Well,
don't say that.
do you want to to put them off like that?
I want to keep the door open. So
Yeah.
I'm using surprise in the way that is, I was living my life, la 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 la, interacting with you as a family member, la 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 la. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you said something hateful. And I'm using surprise like, whoa, I didn't know my day was going to be like this right now. So that's what I say. And it helps to, without using the word, and that is really gross to me. I say that is really surprising to me because
And I
it
want to
lets
name, oh,
the
sorry,
door
Trilly, go
stay
ahead.
open. Yeah. Go for it, Jess.
That's what I was going to say, is that
Yeah.
when we were preparing for this conversation, truly named that you want folks to shift behavior, not in the way that they just don't say douchey things around you. So making sure that you are inviting dialogue around these phrases is really helpful. Patricia, you have a slightly different way of approaching, especially this
Yeah.
first.
And we were kind of talking about this in our pregame session and this is something I know that we've had a lot of conversations about. What do you say to people when they're online? This is my go-to online. And then I usually walk away and then let them lose their mind. But I usually say, if somebody says something really egregious to me, I'll stop, because here's a couple things that are happening in my brain. I am educated in a white, conservative, racist community. And I'm also educated as a female in that community to question myself, right? So a lot of times somebody will say something really egregious, and I'm like, should I be upset about that? What should I say? Do I say it out loud? Is it my work to say it out loud? And so I'm having that whole just mental breakdown in my head. And what I come out with is, I don't understand what you mean by Kamala Harris is aggressive. Could you unpack that a little bit more for me? Could you give me an example? And that, then they are speaking the thing. I can't tell you how many white dudes who have said something horrible to me, like Joe and the hoe. And you say, could you talk a little bit more about who's the hoe in this situation? And having them have to say out loud what they felt like was racist shorthand that we should just know, it will hands down shut down the conversation. Now, my question is, based on what Jess just said, is it good that I'm shutting down the conversation by asking them, could you unpack that a little bit more? I will be really honest, what I'm doing is wanting to make them a little uncomfortable. So I don't know if that's as loving as you guys are presenting this conversation. I mean, I'm sticking with it. I'll have the full
That's your
conversation.
I have seen you and heard you do that a number of times. I actually think it's a really productive tactic. I would call it loving, even though it is kind of an instigating comment. It's instigating, in my opinion, in good faith. So there's that. There are a couple of other things that we can recommend or lift up. And again, on Insta and in Zoom, I'm curious if you are in these conversations with people saying problematic things. What have you said? What have you done that you would recommend? If you have counterexamples, I would be interested in that too. One thing that you could say, here's how I see it. Because in conversations where somebody says something problematic, harmful, let's be more explicit. When somebody says something harmful and you kind of call attention to it, sometimes they'll throw up their hand, look, this is just how I see it. Okay, let's talk about that then. Here's how I see it. I see that as harmful. I see that as participating in a conversation that maybe a larger conversation that maybe you don't know you're participating in, but that causes actual physical, literal harm to people. And that's how I see it. So that's a way of keeping the conversation open. Also, when it comes to the superhuman trope, but actually any of these, again, bring it back down to your real personal life. If they say something harmful, about somebody that they don't know, somebody that is in the news, online, famous, an author, whatever, relate it back to somebody that they know in real life. I'm thinking about my grandmother's longtime friend, Mary, a Black woman in Southern Mississippi. And I would ask Ganny, is that, when she would say things about community members, I would say, well, is that really how you feel about Mary? And it was a way of opening up a larger conversation. Did everything fix? No. Was she magically not a white woman who was born in the 1920s in Louisiana? No. But did it open a deeper conversation about what it means to talk about and support folks in our community? Absolutely. Truly, is
I
your
see
hand up on
Truly's
purpose?
hand up.
My hand is up on purpose.
Okay.
I want to offer this because the three of us know each other pretty well. And so the difference in our responses, we intuit and know what it means. So for those of you who are meeting Patricia here tonight, go check out her Instagram and her handle. She's going to tell you that she is a salty Buddhist. She's going to tell you she's a salty fundraiser. I'm a little more wholesome and mom-like and not like necessarily.
I'm a childless dog lady.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean? Love them all. But
Mhm.
I think that what I want to say about this is, as you all are formulating, what are your words that you want to use? What's in your back pocket? What's in your toolkit? Know who you are and know your relationship with others. When Patricia says this to the people she's calling in with love, they know Patricia. It's not like she's talking to some stranger, right?
Mhm.
When someone hears me say with my tone of voice, that's really surprising to me. You know what I mean? So I guess you all know your people and you know yourself, but having a phrase that calls someone into account, that builds time, all of these phrases do that. You're building time, you're leaving the door open for that conversation to continue. Like Jess says, not just so that they stop saying gross crap around you, but so they stop saying it, period, and hopefully maybe start rethinking the things they think they know.
All right. Speaking of time, we're going to go to the bookshelf.
We have books that we recommend in every conversation, and I'm going to do it a little out of order on the deck. We haven't referenced this book in conversation, but I think it's one that would be really helpful in these conversations. It's My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem, and it is really about unpacking the toxicity that is white supremacy in all bodies. This isn't specific to what Resmaa calls white-bodied people, white cultured people. It's for everyone, but he really talks about how this culture finds itself inside of us physically. And I find that so powerful. And when you are in these conversations, knowing how your body is showing up is a part of doing the work, and not making those, oh God, my chest hurts, I need to throw a shoe, somebody else's problem. The other one that I want to recommend, I mentioned earlier, Sarah Smarsh's Bone of the Bone. This is a compendium of her essays over the last 10 years, including the one that I discovered her through Poor Teeth. And when I appreciated Sarah for meeting her in person, I accidentally cried telling her how much Poor Teeth meant to me.
Aw.
So cannot recommend it enough. I'm listening to the audio version, and her Kansas voice is both deeply soothing and deeply challenging. So those are our books for tonight. We have about 5 minutes to get into questions, thoughts, feelings.
I'm
Not gonna.
hoping that you all have been asking and answering questions in the chat.
Mhm,
You are your own best audience as well.
mhm.
We
I want to
have had
lift
an
up.
active chat.
Mhm.
We
Good.
have. Do you
I
guys
want to
want
lift up.
a paraphrased question from the chat?
Before we do, I want to do this before I forget. We've got a comment on Insta that says, "My people are awful, just rancid." Noted. Not every conversation is for every person. Not every person is going to be open to moving the needle. What we're trying to do is give you tools for if this is something that you can engage safely and generatively. I think a lot about my family, again, anchored a lot in Southern Mississippi and now scattered all over the United States, but there's a core of Catholicism in our family that translates politically to we will do anything to keep abortion from being legal. But none of these people are caricatures. They're all folks that I deeply love and care about. Some of them are extra hilarious. And I want to know what it means to have conversations with them. If you are dealing with folks who are abusive on an interpersonal level, who are not engaging this conversation in good faith, let me say, then this might not be the tool for that relationship. All right, truly, I'm ready. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Jess. And to our Instagram friend, I feel you. I'm with you. Okay, so we have some comments in the chat, and I just thought it would be worth exploring as a group. Of course, anti-Blackness and misogynoir have a very specific place in our national history and our national zeitgeist, but I want to acknowledge, and it was acknowledged in the chat as well, that, US history and just global history and contemporary world broadly relies on othering, broadly relies on stereotypes for power grabs. It's for power, right? Anti-Semitism was named. We see this with Islamophobia. We see this with homophobia, with transphobia, with all the phobias. It's an othering. And I'm wondering if you two want to talk about that, about the very specific and the very specific nature of misogynoir, but also its connection to this larger sense of othering on a global scale.
Patricia, I wonder if that's something you want to touch on?
Well, I'll come back to what I think about a lot is where is the power and the money and who is investing and keeping the power and money in an identifiable group that is their group, right? White males, white people in general. So the othering to me is very specifically focused on, Jess is going to look at me and give me a little nudge, capitalism. That to me, it's like, is it capitalism or is it racism, or is it racism because it's capitalism? I don't know. But that would be my short answer for today, for a conversation that, truthfully, call me up. I'll have a long conversation with you. Jess, did you have any alternate visions of that?
I don't think so. I think it's a large question, and I'll actually touch on it when we talk about next week's topic.
Okay. Are we good on time? We moving forward? Or we got one?
We're
more
doing
question?
great on time. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just wondering if there are any other questions and comments.
There was one question, or it's just kind of some thoughts in the chat, I guess. I'll wrap them up. And please chat away if I get it wrong. But there's a lot of talk about polls, right? Yes, yay, maybe Texas is a swing state now, and that's exciting. But we all lived through 2016. Like, what do we think about polls? And do we?
I mean, who's telling the truth in polls? I'm not 100% sure who's telling the truth. Particularly,
and are they indicative of the things they say they're indicative of?
Particularly when you throw the isms in, right? You all want to look good to the pollsters, even if you don't like ladies, even if you don't like Black people. You're going to vote how you're going to vote. You probably tell the nice young 25-year-old pollster something different. So I don't know that I believe polls, particularly in these races.
No, I appreciate that. And I said something about it in the Zoom chat that polls are a bellwether, but should absolutely be taken with a dumpster full of salt. Part of what I use when I was referencing Colin Allred pulling ahead in polls in Texas is, I'm not going to say that I grabbed for good news, but part of my sustaining energy in this work, because you guys, 44 days, we got another 7 weeks of this, which is fine. This is totally, everything's fine. But it is important to me to understand.
Everything's awful. Nothing's wrong.
That's Patricia's title always. Is to understand that good things are happening now, that victories are being had now, that great work is happening now. I saw some comment about on the Zoom chat about relationship based work happening specifically geared towards suburban white women who astronomically went for Trump in 2016 and even more in 2020. And oh my gosh, got so excited that I lost track of what was I talking about. Anyway, it was great.
You were talking about polls and you were wrapping it up.
Dumpster
You
fire
were getting there.
salt.
I was on that ride with you.
I am so energized when I see other people doing work that energizes them. Colin Allred is conducting a really fun campaign. Poll numbers aside, I am glad that some people think that he's doing well and that he has more than a snowball's chance in Texas of winning. I think that's amazing.
That is my new go-to phrase, a snowball's chance in Texas.
I feel great about
it. A blue snowball's chance in Texas.
I do want to talk about
we're coming up on time. What are we going to talk about?
I got it. I'll keep it short. Christina in Zoom chat says an 18-year-old was 10 years old in 2016. So an 18-year-old voting for the first time this year. Please explain why polls in 2016 were an issue. Poll after poll after poll. I think more than 90% of polls predicted Hillary Clinton's win in a landslide, which contributed to a lot of cultural complacency, myself included. Absolutely. In supporting her election. And again, like part of that was electoral college semantics. But we relied too much on polls to tell us what to do. So that's, yes, Christina, super appreciate that comment.
Now we got to move on.
Do it. So next week's topic
is going to be an open Q&A forum on purpose this time. And we want to hear your questions. So, take a couple minutes. We have 5 minutes before we're going to end to pop things into the chat. That may feel big. That may feel even tiny, like whatever it is that you want to see. We're all three going to look at them. We're going to pull some themes out and then we're going to rock with it. And then it's just going to be hopefully a big conversation. Do I got it right?
Yeah.
All right.
It.
Awesome. I'm killing it on time today. I'm killing it.
You are.
Jess doesn't have to send me one of those texts that pulls me off the stage. Speaking of money, we would love it if you would help us defray our costs and appreciate our time and labor. We'll take a hallelujah, but we would also really love a little cash to help offset these things that we do without getting formally paid for. Thank you, capitalism. So this is our alternative to capitalism, is please give us some support to help us continue this work and these conversations that take lovely infrastructure and time and talent of the humans that you see before you. You can do that by hitting me up on Venmo. Patricia-Berry, Berry -38 is my Venmo handle. And on Zelle, it's my, we call it an email address. Thank you, 930. I don't have any words left. My email address is patricia@patricia-berry, BERRY.com. And you can Zelle us, whatever you have. Honestly, we love the money, but probably more honestly, we love the vote of confidence that you find this valuable. So
I love the comments that people leave when they give. There was one woman who was like, I'm in East Lansing, but I'm giving anyway. That was a month ago and I'm still laughing. And I also, you guys, 930 really is hitting hard. Anyway, thank you in advance for any support that you feel like sharing. We think that you guys are amazing.
And so that is a big thank you. We are at the end of Move the Needle. And oh my God, we're killing it on time. We came in at 9:30. I'm not going to get pulled off of Instagram. Thank you, Instagram. I'm here. So thank you for being here in this conversation. I cannot wait to hear what you guys are going to pull us down on next week. Thank you for being co-learners with us. We are here every Sunday night until the week after the election. Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And we're cute as hell, and we like to talk about politics. So,
and if you'd like to reach us between now and then, you can find all three of us on Instagram. You can also email us. Truly is at Truly Are. Patricia is at The Salty Fundraiser, and I am at Jessica Letaw. And you can also reach us via email, movetheneedle2024 at patricia-berry.com. That's movetheneedle2024 at patricia-berry, BERRY.com. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
We made it. I don't know how to stop this thing.
That was the
Jane,
last
stop this
comment on
crazy thing.
Instagram.
Hold on a second. I'm not stopped yet.
That was the last comment on Instagram. I don't know how to stop this thing. Close.
All right, I'm signing off, and we're gonna go over to the other version, right?
Yep.
I'll
Thanks,
see
you
you guys in
guys.
a
Have a
sec.
good night. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.